What is up, guys? Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the very basics of anabolic steroids. So I get a lot of people who come to me and, are kind of starting from ground zero. They don't really know anything, what they're supposed to be doing, what they're not supposed to be doing. So today we're going to basically cover all of that. So if you're looking to start a cycle or you're considering hopping on something, I highly recommend you watch this video start to finish. I'm going to give you all the information you're going to need to know. A little preface, I am not promoting the use of anabolic steroids. However, if you're like me, you're going to do them. You're going to do them anyways. I'd rather everybody be safe and know what they're doing and know, what they're putting in their bodies if they're going to do it anyway. So this is going to be kind of a science-based introduction to anabolic steroids, and not to promote, again, but to educate. Another preface, so the two things I would recommend, no matter what you do, if you're going down this route, number one, be educated. So all the horror stories you hear of people getting gyno, growing breasts, having these health issues, I would say 9 out of 10 times, it's not because of the actual compounds. It's because they're not educated and they're not doing something correct. Number two is buy from an approved source. So there's so much crappy stuff out there from China, from the Middle East. Buying crappy stuff will also mess you up. There is one place and one place only I recommend getting gear, and it is linked down in the description. It's a site that I've been using for a number of years. And with that being said, there are 3 pharmacies I would focus on. All of them on that site are good, but there's 3 that have been around a long time, and that's going to be Geneza Pharmaceuticals, Ultima, and Dragon. So those 3, if you go on there and look at anything under those 3, it's going to be good stuff. Depending if you order it domestic or from out of the country, it might take a while to get to you. They've came through every single time, and it's always been good stuff. And it's affordable too. It's not crazy expensive. Also, I do mentorship and cycle coaching. I've actually worked with some people in Hollywood. I've been doing this for about 4 or 5 years. So either of those are linked in the description. If you're interested, let's get into the video. So from the very basics, what are anabolic steroids? So synthetic derivatives of testosterone mimic muscle building anabolic effects, used medically for diseases, delayed puberty, hormone therapy, used to enhance muscle mass and performance. So basically, when we're talking about anabolic steroids, basically like the basis of anabolic steroids is synthetic testosterone or testosterone derivatives. Testosterone, the man hormone, muscle growth, fat loss. There's androgenic and anabolic effects, which we'll get into later, but that can include deepening of the voice, aggression, a number of different things. But when we're talking about anabolic steroids, we're mostly talking about testosterone and other medications that have other usages that we are using in order to bodybuild or train or get bigger or leaner or whatever it is. We're going to talk about TRT versus cycling. So this is something that's really important to distinguish, and basically that's the differentiation between testosterone replacement therapy and cycling or steroid use for performance. So when we're talking about TRT, we're basically talking about people who have medical issues where their natural testosterone levels are low. A lot of them will opt to get on TRT, which stands for testosterone replacement therapy. So they're basically taking a maintenance dose of testosterone, and they're committing to taking this for the rest of their lives. Because if you take testosterone for a long enough period of time, your natural testosterone is not going to work, or it's not going to come back as high as it should. So these are typically people in their 40s where they're having health issues, their testosterone levels are shot, and they will get on TRT. There are people much younger doing it, but when we're talking about it, it's purpose, again, it's a medical treatment for low testosterone levels. The dose is low, steady dose, just enough to bring levels to a healthy natural range. Length, again, it's ongoing, it's lifelong. If you commit to TRT, you're basically committing to it for your whole life. And the goal is to normalize mood, energy, libido, physical function, not bodybuilder level gains. And this is usually supervised by a doctor with regular blood work, which anything you're doing, regular blood work, 100%. And the side effects, fewer because estrogen and other hormones are monitored and controlled. The one major side effect with TRT, committing to be on TRT, is that eventually it will prevent you from having kids. It will mess up your reproductive system. So that's, again, why I'm saying people typically in their 40s or 50s, they've had their kids, they're not having any more. There's not really a lot of adverse side effects for them to hop on TRT. Now, when we're talking about cycling or steroid use for performance, the purpose is to build muscle, increase strength, and enhance physique. The dosage is much higher than TRT, often multiple compounds or stacking, which we'll get into. As far as the length goes, it's done in short bursts, or that's obviously why we call them cycles, in 6 to 16 weeks, usually followed up by time off. The goal is to maximize anabolic gains, often for aesthetic or performance reasons. Supervised by, often self-managed or underground, not always medical. There's no doctors who are going to really, unless you're doing them anyway, there's no doctors that are going to like moderate your cycle. That's where people like me, or there's a lot of other people who are really good online, come in, is they can kind of guide you and make sure you're doing everything correct and your blood work looks good, so you don't run into any side effects or risks. Side effects for cycles is higher risk of estrogen spikes, testosterone shutdown, heart strain, and PCT often needed. So the easiest way to explain like a testosterone cycle is versus TRT is TRT, you're taking the same level of testosterone that it would be naturally occurring in a healthy person's body. With a cycle, you're boosting your testosterone levels, so you're that around like a 15 or 16-year-old where, at that point in your life, your testosterone levels are through the roof because, you're developing muscle, you're developing all of your manly characteristics. So with TRT, we're looking at a dose of about 150 milligrams a week. It can be as low as 100, as high as 200. With a cycle, you're looking at something from like 350 to like some people take really high doses, which up to like 1,000, which I do not recommend at all. It's typically around 350 to I would say anywhere from 200 to 500 or 600 is like a normal cycle range. So next we're going to talk about types of cycles. So the first one a lot of people do for their first cycle is a test cycle. Anytime I say test, I'm referring to testosterone. And this cycle consists of using only exogenous testosterone. So like in the previous slide, it was talking about, these are typically stacked with other compounds. A test cycle is just testosterone. You have to take other stuff with it, but none of them are performance enhancing. You're just boosting your testosterone levels. Then there's pairing testosterone with other compounds. So this is the most common type of cycle. So most of these compounds have an effect on natural testosterone levels, so pairing them with testosterone is imperative. Users will typically go for a bulking cycle, which the primary goal is developing muscle mass. Others opt for a cut or recomposition cycle, in which fat loss and overall body composition is the focus. So depending on the user's goals, the secondary or third compound paired with the testosterone will vary. For instance, compounds such as Anavar or Winstrol are known for having a cutting effect, while compounds like Deca or D-bol are preferred for bulk. So to kind of summarize, if you're kind of just, getting your toes wet here, a test cycle might be a good option for you. See how your body reacts to the testosterone. If you want to do a stack cycle, then you would take testosterone with something like testosterone and Anavar, where now you have the Anavar as an acting compound as well as the testosterone to enhance the cutting, or D-bol to enhance the bulking. That's the most common types of cycles. So anabolic versus androgenic, these are two terms you'll hear in bodybuilding and steroid use a lot. Anabolic is muscle growth, bone density, red blood cell production. So anabolic is what we really are going for and what we want. Androgenic is where the male sex traits come in, like a deeper voice, facial hair. Steroids differ by their anabolic androgenic ratio. So typically anabolic is highly sought after. We want the muscle growth, we want the bone density, we want the red blood cell production. Androgenic can be good. Sometimes we want the deeper voice and the facial hair. With that being said, androgenic can also be negative things like hair loss, and maybe we don't want these other traits. So it's something to think about depending on our goals. So this is a very important topic, and this is aromatization. And so basically what aromatization is when your body turns testosterone into estrogen using an enzyme called aromatase. The higher level of testosterone, typically the more aromatization. This needs to be combated using an AI or aromatase inhibitor. So to kind of summarize this, when you have high levels of testosterone, so when you're, I wouldn't say necessarily if you were on like a TRT dose, but if you're like on a cycle, you're on 350, 400 or more milligrams of test a week, what will happen is aromatization, which your body does a strange thing which for some reason it decides to convert some of the testosterone into estrogen, which we do not want. We don't want more estrogen. We do want some estrogen. We want normal levels of estrogen. We don't want that high levels. And this is one of those things where you'll hear people like getting gyno, and that's because of this. So this is easily combated with an AI. So an AI is an aromatase inhibitor, and those will include Arimidex, Aromacin, Letrozole. Arimidex and Aromacin, I would say, are the two most common ones, and these are just taken at a super low dose with the testosterone. Totally prevents this from happening. So if you're doing like a test-only cycle, you would still want an AI. You always want to have an AI on hand. So common types of anabolic steroids. As far as injectables go, testosterone enanthate, there's all different blends of testosterone. There's cypionate, there's propionate, there's tons of them. They're all relatively similar. They mostly differ in the esters, and ester is like the half-life of something. So we'll kind of get into that later, but there's all sorts of testosterone blends. Then there's trenbolone and decadurabolin. Trenbolone is kind of like the famous one for being really kind of like harsh and dirty. There's like a lot of memes about it. Tren is not something that I would touch if you're new to this at all. It's got for sure the heaviest side effects. Obviously, you can do quite a bit as far as muscle growth goes, but it's really heavy stuff. It can be really bad for you, especially if you're new and you don't know how your body's going to react to these compounds. Decadurabolin is a bulker. I've used it. It's amazing. It does come with a lot of water weight, but it'll definitely get you big. And then some of the more common orals are Dianabol, so D-bol it's referred to as. Again, a really good bulker. Anavar, a really good cutter. Winstrol, and Anadrol. So those are all our cutters. And these vary in half-life, potency, and side effect profile. So how do they work in the body? They bind your androgen receptors in muscle and increase protein synthesis and nitrogen retention. Enhance recovery and reduce muscle breakdown. Works best with training and calorie surplus. So again, think about when you're 15, 16, 17 years old, you're going through puberty, you have these huge high testosterone levels. Your protein synthesis is really high. You can eat and eat and eat, and you're going to build muscle. You're growing. You recover super fast. This is kind of what we're thinking about, is kind of putting ourselves in this state. So let's talk about some potential side effects, and I'm going to read these off, and then I'm going to kind of go off on, my own experience and what I've seen from coaching tons and tons of cycles and talking to tons and tons of people. Short-term, acne, mood swings, oily skin, high blood pressure. Long-term, liver damage, especially with orals, testosterone suppression, gynecomastia, infertility, cardiovascular strain. Okay, so after seeing so many people go through cycles and doing so many myself, basically the most common short-term ones I see are, you can think about this, is if you don't have these problems on nothing, there's a very good chance you will not have them on when you're on gear. For instance, I'm very even keel. I'm very mellow. People are like, don't you get roid rage? Absolutely never. I've never gotten even like maybe a little edgy, but like very, very little much so. So like I never have gotten angry. I've never done any crazy roid rage stuff. I'm not an angry person when I'm not taking them. With that being said, I have known people who are like a little angry and a little violent, and they take them and it kind of exacerbates that. It's the same thing with acne. I'm not prone to acne at all. I have tons of cycles. I might get a zit here or there. I don't really get acne. However, if you have like backne already or acne problems, yes, they'll probably worsen. Oily skin, something I've never really seen or experienced. High blood pressure. One here that it doesn't touch on is hair loss. Hair loss can be a real thing. Again, this is a genetic thing. So are you already losing your hair? If you're already losing your hair and you run a cycle, again, some compounds are going to be worse than others. There's compounds like Masteron that will like make you lose quite a bit of hair. If you have good hair genetics, you probably won't lose any hair. So again, all these things really apply to like how your body reacts and how it kind of already is without taking anything. So me speaking from personal experience, I ran maybe 6 or 7 cycles. I've done, some TRT. I haven't experienced really any of these, any cycles at all. I do have a slightly suppressed testosterone level. So when I come off, after 5 or 6 cycles, my T levels are a little lower than normal. My fertility is still fine. I have noticed a little bit of shedding lately, like very light hair shedding. But again, that's me. You really have to ask yourself, do you experience any of these before taking the cycle? And then long term, so a lot of people get really scared of these side effects, but here's the way I think about it. Is the same people who get so scared about these side effects are the same people who go out partying and do blow and cocaine and ketamine and all this and that. This stuff isn't going to be any worse than any of those crazy party drugs you take. It's just, we're so trained and programmed that steroids are bad for you. And again, I'm not advocating for use. I'm not promoting usage. I'm just giving you guys like a real layout of what to expect. This stuff is all possible. If you see those guys that are just jacked, on Instagram and they've been taking insane amounts of steroids for years, yeah, they're going to experience this stuff. If you run a couple cycles, odds are you're going to be fine. So, these are always a risk, but think of them as risking in the same way of like, oh, okay, if you do cocaine, like if you do it a couple times, here or there, you're probably going to be fine. If you do it all the time, yeah, you're going to run into health issues. So liver damage, yeah, with orals, they are hard on your liver. That's a for sure thing. So take a liver support if you're taking like oral methylized steroids. The more you do cycles, the more your testosterone is suppressed. That's something you want to address in post-cycle. There's certain things you can do to kind of have it bounce back. Gynecomastia, again, this is one that's totally avoidable if you get bloods and you take the right stuff. Infertility, yes, if you take too much testosterone over a long period of time, you can be infertile. And cardiovascular strain. So if you have heart issues, it might not be a good idea. Steroid and heart health. So it can enlarge your heart or your upper left ventricle, I think it is. Lower HDL, raise LDL. Those are hormone levels. And again, here we see trenbolone again as highly cardiotoxic. So some are harsher than others on your cardiovascular system. Trenbolone, anadrol, and superdrol being pretty harsh. So natural testosterone suppression. So steroids suppress natural T production. And that's why post-cycle therapy is often required. Long-term hypogonadism is possible, and some users never fully recover. So we'll talk about what post-cycle therapy is in a second. Absolutely mandatory information to know. When you take testosterone, it tells your body, hey, we don't need to produce natural testosterone because the level is already so high. So that shuts down your body's natural production of testosterone until you stop taking the exogenous testosterone. So what happens is that's why you hear people say like your balls get smaller, and they do, but they typically plump back up right after. It says some users never recover. That is true. Again, this is something I would probably worry more about with like heavier use. If you run, 2 or 3 cycles, odds are you'll be fine. So PCT and why it's important. So post-cycle therapy, very important. A recovery phase after a steroid cycle to restart natural testosterone production. So this is where we get into everything we just talked about and how to avoid it. Why it matters: steroid use shuts down your body's ability to make natural testosterone. Without PCT, you risk low T, depression, muscle loss, and libido issues. Common PCT medications is Clomid, which stimulates the brain to signal natural testosterone production, and Nolvadex, which helps reduce estrogen and boost natural T levels. You typically last 4 to 6 weeks, and your goal is to get your hormones back in balance, prevent long-term shutdown, or needing TRT for life. I'm sorry, that should be PCT. I don't know why it says PCP. A typical PCT cycle is Clomid and Nolvadex over like 4 weeks. And basically it's helping your body bounce all of its natural levels back so you don't get gynecomastia from your estrogen levels going up. Your natural testosterone starts kicking back up. So if you do this right, it's really going to minimize any potential side effects. Also, the weeks after your cycle is a very important time to continue lifting. This is where it's going to determine how much of your gains you keep. So you really want to be adamant about PCT, and you really want to stay lifting at this time period. Here's an example of a basic cycle. Again, you can go anywhere from 6 to 14 weeks. 10 weeks are the standard kind of cycle. So 10 weeks is good, where it's like you'll get the full recovery and you'll also get the full benefits of a cycle without cutting it short or without going into, a longer period of time where you're damaging stuff. So something around 350 testosterone weekly is a pretty good average number. So you do this weekly. It's best to split this into 2 doses. So what would that be? 175 or something twice a week. 25 milligrams of Anavar daily. So Anavar is a pill. So the VAR you want to run for a shorter period of time, like 4 to 6 weeks. You wouldn't run it the whole 10 weeks. You can run it at the beginning or the end. And then, like we talked about the AI, we need that so we don't, convert our test to estrogen. 0.5 milligrams of an AI, like Arimidex, every other day is a standard dose. And then once we're done with our 10-week cycle, we do a 4-week PCT cycle of 50 milligrams daily Clomid, 40 milligrams per day of Nolvadex for 2 weeks, and then go down to 20 milligrams for 2 weeks. This would be, in my opinion, a pretty standard cycle, like a standard cut cycle. And again, we could switch this with the times and the compounds, but like this is just an example of like what we're looking at. Another really important thing to think about is when you're starting certain compounds, depends on the ester or half-life of the compounds. So like we talked about, an ester is kind of like the half-life of how long stuff takes to work and then how long it stays in your body. So there's all different sorts of testosterone blends. Let's say the testosterone we're taking has a 3-week ester. That means that it takes 3 weeks to fully get in our system and 3 weeks to fully get out. For that reason, if we started taking it, we would wait until the 3rd week to introduce the AI, and then we would wait 3 weeks to start the PCT. I hope that was helpful. I hope that was good enough information to get you started. Again, in the link below, you can, consult with me if you need some more help. And the link to the compounds are there. Don't hesitate to reach out. There's some good forums online as well. And just be educated, guys. If you're going to do this stuff, there's odds are you can do so with little risk and get some pretty good gains if you're doing it correctly and smart. Always make sure you're doing your research and consulting the right people. So thank you guys for watching. I'm going to be doing more videos about safety and standard protocols for anabolics. And yeah, make sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.